Sai Kiran Kannan joins us. He's an open source analyst, works with our open source intelligence desk from Singapore. Ainar Tenjin joins us. He's a political commentator live from Beijing. Sai Kiran, I come to you first. You know, you helped us put the story together. It's very interesting how on Weibo, because ordinarily most people imagine that the Chinese citizens don't really ask questions of their government, and something like PLA not declaring casualties would not be questioned by Chinese nationals. Your investigation suggests that there are not just one or two, but dozens of such posts where searching questions are being asked for the PLA, and the Xi Jinping administration is being questioned for its stunning silence.
Yes, that was the most toughest part, because when we are looking at social media comments and reactions from citizens, China and India are totally different. In India, you can openly, tweet or put up a Facebook post on even the Prime Minister, right? So, but that is not the case with China, and this is something that we have seen in the past as well. When we talk about COVID-19, the internet censorship is pretty stringent in China, and there are also aspects of people being rated based on their social media behavior and also their public life. So there's a lot of censorship there, and that's one of the prime reasons why Twitter is banned in China. But you would all obviously see official Chinese government accounts or Global Time journalists, using Twitter for their own propaganda. But the normal citizens, sometimes they try to get through using Twitter by VPN, but not the case otherwise.
But I read, Kannan, that when Chinese nationals in the Wuhan area questioned the Chinese government and the local administration's response to the coronavirus, many of them disappeared. So are these citizens safe? I know we've gone out of our way to ensure that we haven't revealed the names of any of those who put out posts, because for all you know, the government in Beijing could end up putting them in some kind of a camp somewhere soon.
Yes, I think that is where we've been very careful not to reveal any source of information with regards to their profile names or their profile pictures. But like I said, yeah, so even if you notice the comments that we've unearthed, they're not entirely critical of the government, right? You would nowhere will you see comments like the government is responsible, or so and so is responsible. You would have very subtle messaging where the emotion is what comes to the fore in the comments, and not actually who is responsible. It's just like an anguish that you can express something via Weibo or any other platform, but you will not see anyone pinpointing at a specific entity. Like you will not have the army chief question, or you will not have the prime minister question, president question. So that is where they try to put out a subtle message where they can share their anguish with one another, but you will not have very stringent criticism of the party.
Ainar Tenjin, why can't the PLA hold a public memorial like the Indian Army has? Why are we not revealing the number of soldiers who were killed? Why can't the PLA, like the Indian Army, respect the martyrdom of those who went down fighting? Those are questions being asked of Chinese, by Chinese citizens of the Chinese government. What are you making of this, sir?
Well, I think it's entirely normal for people to be wondering what happened, if there were Chinese casualties, and if so, what's going to happen next. And I think my colleague has adequately explained that people are putting those questions out. Those questions are actually quite routine on Weibo. Where the government takes a much harder line is when people try to organize other people to create protests, or to say that there should be a movement, or that individuals should be questioned. In China, the government is always responsible, and that goes without saying. There's only one party. You can't blame it. BJP can blame it on Congress. Congress can blame it on BJP. But in China, the ultimate responsibility is always with the government. Now, the reason you have a government is for cooler heads. That's why generals don't run civilian governments, or when they do, it's not always the best. So at this point, Beijing is trying to make sure that this situation doesn't become more inflamed. If there was an announcement of a lot of casualties and a big memorial service, the Chinese nationalism, which is on the rise, would be even worse. And that would be very hard and as you guys are experiencing, India's experience. People become inflamed by their emotions and they don't see the larger picture. What you have here are soldiers who engaged in a kind of masculine show of bravado, and unfortunately, regardless of whose fault it was, people died. And that's the real tragedy. Now the question is, how do you prevent that? You know, these 20 lives, very precious. But right now, India is experiencing well and almost 15,000 deaths. This is something that is a greater threat to India on a daily basis than this. It has to be about economic recovery. So at this point, yes, it is important that cooler heads prevail.
But the fact is that when Chinese citizens questioned their government's silence around the deaths in Wuhan, the Chinese government came down really hard on them, and many of them were reported to have disappeared. In fact, those who questioned Xi Jinping disappeared, so much so that they were never heard from again. And that also is the reality. So you're making it seem as if on Weibo, when these questions are asked, the Chinese government is very tolerant of those questions. The reality is, when questions were asked in the past, there was very, very strict action taken, and we never know what happened to those, and we can only imagine the worst.
Well, I don't know who you're referring to. There was one big case involving an ophthalmologist who made a passing observation to some private friends of his that he saw something that looked like SARS. That was considered rumor mongering by the local Chinese government. They did caution him. They brought him. He was not put in jail. All right. But subsequently, he was exonerated by the national government, who said what he had done was okay. But he was not a whistleblower. He had simply spread something outside his area of expertise, and they considered it rumor mongering. It's kind of like you can't, you have freedom of speech, but you can't run into a packed movie theater and yell fire. So this was the kind of situation that they were dealing with. I don't know about what other people you say who have disappeared. Do you have more facts, names, dates?
I wish there were more facts available even to the Chinese people, and dates as well, but that really is the unfortunate reality of how China functions. You're saying that the Chinese army is trying to dial down on tensions. It seems to people here, Mr. N.R. Tenjin, that what is being said is divorced from what's being done. Even in the last instance, when the military level talks were happening, the message was that there would be de-escalation, but while the Indian army actually pulled back, the Chinese army used the same period to build its force strength even further in those areas. So therefore, everything that you say is being viewed at with a lot of suspicion here.
Well, I can't affect your opinion on this. We disagree. I think there is a real problem there. Obviously, you have two sides claiming an area where both sides say they have been patrolling in the past. As we said, the reality is you can't live there. You can barely breathe there. But there is a road that India has been creating there. There was the issue with Kashmir. There are, leaders in the Indian government from the RSS who have said that they will not rest until they seize back Pakistani-controlled Kashmir. And under those circumstances, together with India coming closer to the U.S., buying helicopters and signing communication packages, where China is uncertain, and it's a shame. The benefits and what could have happened with Wuhan and Chennai seem to have been pushed aside by the realpolitik of governments who are in a situation where they're trying to control domestic issues, such as COVID-19 and the economic effects thereafter. And these kind of political things, which seem to be more like, sideshows. This is not the most pressing thing that these governments have to deal with.
Okay, we'll leave it there just for the time being. Kannan, for breaking that very interesting insight. Thank you very much. A story which reveals how on Chinese Twitter, multiple questions being asked of the Chinese government. And that's the other thing about China. They don't allow Facebook and Twitter. Instead, they have their own, which is why it's easier for the Chinese government to control what goes down there. We're slipping into a break. We'll have more for you when we come back on the other side. Stay with us. Hello everyone, this is Rahul Kanwal here. Hope you enjoyed this video. For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel, and don't forget to
to press the bell icon to stay updated.